Hi everyone, my name is Mycah and I'm a registered social worker in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. I am very honored to present at this International Federation of Social Work conference. I work in private practice at a place called Anchorage Counseling Services here in Kitchener, and I'm very passionate about working with people who practice consensual non-monogamy, including something called polyamory, where everyone consents to having multiple sexual and romantic partners. In the field of social work, polyamory is not often talked about. I actually just graduated last year from the University of British Columbia Okanagan campus with a Master's of Social Work. And we did not discuss polyamory at all while I was in school. I would very much like to see social work handling polyamory and other types of non-monogamy well in curriculum as well as in the field. So while I was in the program, I had the opportunity to write a paper which was published in the journal Social Work, which is published by the National Association of Social Workers in the US, where I was doing a literature search, and I published something called a scoping review, where you're trying to find all of the literature in a short amount of time. I'm extremely honored that the article was accepted by Social Work, because, as I said, I would very much like to see the field touching upon polyamory and other types of consensual non-monogamy, because there are more and more people practicing it. In North America, one article estimates that 4 to 5% of people are practicing some type of consensual non-monogamy. This includes polyamory, where people consent to multiple romantic or sexual relationships. It also includes swinging, which is generally couples who swap sexual partners, and also open relationships, where generally a couple agrees to have relationships outside of their own, which can be sexual or romantic or both. There's actually a Canadian academic, Alexis Shotwell, who also coined another definition for polyamory, which is negotiating desire for multiple relationships. And this is the definition that I used in my article. I think the idea of negotiating desire is important because there are people who are single or in a relationship, and they may negotiate desire within themselves or with their partner or multiple partners. And people decide what types of relationships they would like, whether sexual or romantic or neither. Some people decide to practice relationship anarchy, which is where even friendships have the same importance as romantic or sexual, or romantic and sexual relationships. For the article, so as I mentioned, I did what's called a scoping review, where you're trying to find literature, in my case related to counseling, polyamory, social work, therapy, psychotherapy, as well as non-monogamy in general. And I was looking for articles that were published from January 2008 to November 2018 when I started the search. I was very disappointed because only 2 out of the 47 articles I found were in social work journals. 10 of the articles I found were in a journal called Sexual and Relationship Therapy. And there are articles in a lot of other disciplines and fields. I think in social work we're still at the beginning of talking about sexuality, LGBTQ issues, in a way that really reflects society. And I hope to make a contribution to the field while I'm in practice and potentially in a PhD. So I searched the following databases: Medline, which has a lot of medical articles, PsycInfo, which is more psychological, social services abstracts, which do have social work articles, social work abstracts, CINAHL, which is nursing and allied health, as well as Web of Science. I basically found 4 themes in the literature that I expand upon in the article. The first theme is clinician biases towards monogamy as well as non-monogamy. The fluidity of polyamorous identities and relationships. Commitment as well as secure attachment. And finally, the need for a safe therapeutic environment for polyamorous clients. So I'm going to talk about each of these themes. So with regard to the first one, so clinician biases towards both monogamy and non-monogamy, a lot of authors state that, first of all, inside of the therapy room, relationship styles are not often talked about, and a lot of clinicians assume that clients are monogamous. This speaks to something called mononormativity, where we believe that monogamy is the natural and normal state for human beings, which isn't necessarily true. Indeed, even clinicians who practice some type of non-monogamy may also have their own biases. They may feel that the way that they practice non-monogamy is the true way, when it may not be, or it may not be reflective of their clients' experiences. So regardless of how you identify your relationship style, it's important to be aware of your own biases and how these impact therapeutic relationships. As well, as I was alluding to earlier, there is a lack of literature and training in social work and other fields such as psychology in regards to non-monogamy. So if you're reading a book that deals with couple therapy, there may not be any kind of mention about polyamory or other types of consensual non-monogamy. So I do hope in the future that that is remedied, and I will speak to that more again later. The second theme is the fluidity of polyamorous identities and relationships. Some people feel that polyamory is a sexual orientation, meaning that they will always identify as polyamorous. They will always have the desire for multiple relationships, even if they are not currently in any relationships. And when you do have the freedom to have many relationships, the way that those relationships appear may be different. And there are people who are polyamorous, many of whom identify as bisexual or queer, and they may experience a shift in the genders of their partners on a regular basis, depending on how long relationships last for. Also, in one study, they found that 7% of their polyamorous participants identified as trans, compared to 1% of monogamous people. So when you're going through a transition in your own identity, your relationships may shift. The third theme is commitment and secure attachment. And both of these themes are often conflated with monogamy. In terms of commitment, one article spoke of a concept called agentic fidelity, where a person is able to articulate their needs and boundaries within a relationships. And these needs and boundaries may change. When people are able to talk about what they need in a relationship and those needs are respected, they will be committed to the relationship. And it may look different from monogamy, but that does not mean that it's less valid. In terms of attachment, there is a great deal of literature that talks about avoidant attachment as equated to non-monogamy, and often avoidant people may be interested in multiple casual relationships, but when you are engaging in a serious romantic in multiple serious romantic relationships, it's much easier to be secure because you need to be aware, as I was just speaking about, of your own needs and what you bring to the relationship. There was one study that showed that if you are switching from a monogamous relationship to a polyamorous relationship, it's much easier to have a secure bond because you need to trust that your partner has your best interests in mind. I think the core of this conversation is that people believe that polyamory is about sex and not about love. So it can be very easy to believe that if you're just having sex with several people, you may not be committed or attached. But in fact, when we're talking about engaging in a serious relationship, it is not just sex. And there are many polyamorous people who identify as asexual and may not even want to have sex very frequently or with more than one person. Finally, there is the need to create a safe environment for clients who identify as polyamorous. There may be a situation where a person comes in and they have 2 serious relationships. A clinician cannot assume that one relationship is more important than the other. There's definitely a theme in the literature where people believe that you're not getting your needs met, and that's why you search for another relationship. But in fact, relationship satisfaction within polyamory is also quite high. So being able to suspend your beliefs, which is something known as bracketing, is very important because people have different reasons for becoming polyamorous. Also, it's very important not to force clients to come out. There may be people who are not comfortable coming out as polyamorous because they have children and they are nervous about the children being taken away, or, for example, other children in school spreading rumors. So they may also live in a conservative area or work at a conservative company, and they are not comfortable with other people knowing that they are polyamorous. So if people choose to come out, that is within their own control and in their own time. Also, when you are designing intake forms, it's very important not to assume relationship status. There, often on intake forms, it will say single, married, divorced, etc., but it doesn't really give you the option to say that you are in multiple relationships. So I think it's important to have an intake form where, for example, a client can fill out what kind of relationships they are in, and even if they're not in any at all. So those are the main themes of the article. And to conclude, I think that we need a lot more research into polyamory, especially within social work. As I mentioned, when I was doing my search, there were only 2 articles in social work journals. I'm extremely honored that social work published my article, and I do hope that within social work we talk more about polyamory. Thank you very much. I welcome any questions or comments that you may have, and I'm happy to share the article with anyone who requests it. I should mention that Mycah is my preferred name and my legal name is Miriam. And the article was published under the name Miriam Katz, as well with my supervisor of the paper, John Graham, who is the director of the School of Social Work at UBC Okanagan. Thank you so much for your attention, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.